when you're putting your own skin in the game, I mean, when you're playing in the game, you got to give it 100%, and you just can't sit and watch from the sidelines, basically. I mean, you've got to get in there and you've got to know what's going on and you got to be in the middle of it.
Hello, me folks. Welcome back to the MeatsPad podcast. Today, we're honored to be in Butler, Missouri, in Hertzog. I met Todd almost a year ago when I started here at Ultrasource, and I think when I first heard about the story and how this started, I think I told you a year ago I want you to sit down with me and tell us about this story, and we're starting a little bit of a series of on this podcast, doing it more within the plant. We went a couple months ago in South America. We recorded some videos and podcasts over there now. With you, Todd. Welcome to the MeatsPad podcast. How are you?
Thank you. Good.
I think when you told me about the story about the barn, that we'll touch on that here in a minute. Can you please tell us about what you guys do here and how this all started?
Yeah, and when you mentioned the barn, it's a livestock market is what we call it, the barn too, but just for everybody else, it's a livestock market. We've been in the livestock industry for generations, and it's just something that runs in our blood, and it just kind of makes up who we are. So we've always had a desire to promote our product, whether that be as selling yearlings to a feedlot or finishing fat cattle and selling them finished, or promoting our beef and selling box beef, selling to individuals and selling to restaurants. And so kind of just led us down the path to the processing facility where we are now. We didn't know anything about this industry when we got into it. There's been a lot of blind corners. There's been a lot of steep learning curves. It's a very difficult industry to be in. A lot of times, the prices of cattle and the prices of box beef aren't correlated. There's lots of areas that are hard to manage on both sides. But with the passion that we have for our product and the passion we have for the industry itself, it makes me get up every morning and want to come to work and want to do this, because that's what it takes to be in this business.
What were some of the things that prompted you, just like one morning, you know what, I'm going to do this, start a meat processing facility?
Well, you've got to have the mindset, first of all. So, I mean, that we're driven in that way. We're not afraid to take on a big task or a huge obstacle. So part of that is just a mindset. And, this business there's a lot of barriers to get into this industry, but we did basically just wake up one day and say, we're going for it. Now, we had been kind of aligning ourselves with it for a while before that. We talked about, we wanted our own meat market. We wanted a brick and mortar facility, somewhere close to the city, but those things really aren't realistic unless you have the ability to process cattle. And if you don't have the ability to process cattle, then the meat market, brick and mortar, isn't realistic. So we knew that in order to get to where we wanted to go, that the processing facility was the only way that was going to get us there.
And as of now, what are you guys processing in the plant?
So as of right now, it's mainly strictly beef, Angus beef. And those are locally sourced animals by us. So, I mean, they'd all be a really, really high choice. We run a lot of primes, high percent primes, 98% plus choice cattle is what we're harvesting. We also do hogs. I'm pretty specific on when we do hogs and how many we do. So it's just more or less driven by one or two factors. And then we also do bison. So we're processing bison kind of on a monthly basis just for one specific customer. and hogs are kind of the same way for one specific customer. And then all the cattle, we transferred over from doing private label and custom processing into doing just our own specific cattle. And when I mean specific, like our own owned cattle. They're our cattle.
When you were looking at building the plan, among all the things that you were looking at and taking into consideration, were you looking at doing a state inspected facility, use the inspected facility? What kind of motivated you to do? We're gonna run this. We're gonna be federal inspected.
Yeah, I never was interested in doing anything other than federal. I never thought state was going to be a sustainable outlet or goal, because we're on the state line of Kansas and Missouri. And so for us to be able to sell across state lines, you have to be federally inspected. And so really kind of geographically where we are located, it didn't make any sense to even consider state, although there's nothing wrong with state. I just was thinking about the bigger picture and the longer term, kind of where we wanted to get to, and state wasn't going to take us there. It was only federal.
Speaking of that, and I'd like to follow up on the pre-building, all the planning that you guys do. What were some of the most important things? There's a lot, and we can maybe talk about like a complete 5 episodes on how to build a plan. But I think one of the things that I admire from you is like you were driven to like start from the beginning, like being involved in the building and the construction and the structure, like all the time, pretty much being here the whole year, right? That's what you told me, like being every day
on site. Yeah. Well, I mean, that just goes back to the fact when you're putting your own skin in the game. I mean, when you're playing in the game, you got to give it 100%, and you just can't sit and watch from the sidelines, basically. I mean, you've got to get in there and you've got to know what's going on, and you got to be in the middle of it, because it just gives you a broader knowledge, a broader understanding. And I mean, it's just, you want to be able to show anybody that steps in here, I want to know everything there is to know about this facility, from where every drain was placed to how we're fabbing out every single beef or, pork when we do a pork cutout. So it's just important for me to understand that all the way through. And I just felt like no one was going to do that for us. You can't go hire somebody and pay them too much money and have them really take leadership and ownership of the project the way that we will do it ourselves. And so that's why, even though with no experience, we decided to do it ourselves, and it's starting to kind of pay off.
And for other fellow processors or the future processors, what do you think would be some of your recommendations? And I know and that's one of the other things that I really like about your personality. Like, you're not closing your doors to anyone to see. I mean, you invite people, see, this is a possible thing, this is doable. What are some of the recommendations that you always give to some of the guys that are wanting to open a new facility?
I mean, there's so many. I mean, there really is. I mean, there's so many things just from who you hire. I mean, who you're going to trust to build to do all your electrical, to do your mechanical, to do all your plumbing. I mean, everything is so important. You can't have do-overs, for one. And I mean, just placement of equipment, placement of refrigeration engineering. There's just so many things. I mean, we could get into it. Just would take hours for all the recommendations. And I mean, it's not only from the construction side of it, but then when you actually get into the plant and you start operating and managing a plant, that's so different. I mean, there's so many different doors you could go through. And when I mean doors, I mean different opportunities. Do you want to do only private label? Do you want to further process? Do you want to just do whole packer style? I mean, do you want to do custom and how many different species are you going to do? Are you going to stop during deer season? And there's just so many different little things and little factors that, we kind of had to wade through. And all those things affect your bottom line. I mean, ultimately what you choose and what you decide to do is going to have a big impact on whether you make money or lose money. And you got to do the right things, because if you don't, it's a risky business.
Yeah, for what you're selling, I don't know, maybe the proportion better than anyone. What's the B2C, like business to consumer, business to business? What proportion of that you do? You do more wholesale, or you do more business to consumer business?
So we started off by doing a lot of custom slaughtering for, private labels and just different individuals. And then that became really challenging to manage, from, different cutouts to labeling, to no-shows, people booking and not showing. So we kind of transitioned over to doing just specifically our own cattle. And then within that category, I mean, we're doing a lot of wholesale type sales, but then also a lot of restaurant type sales too. So just any area that you can kind of capture value in. If you have to cut steaks, cutting steaks adds value to a $7.75 strip loin. Ribeyes are $9.30. I mean, if you have the capabilities and ways to cut steaks, you can add value by cutting steaks. But all those come at a cost. They all come at a price. They slow down throughput. It's hard to quantify those numbers sometimes. So really, I mean, right now, I won't get into a whole lot of who I'm selling to or what we're doing, but it's wholesale application, but it's very restaurant driven.
Okay.
So.
Perfect. Last thing that I wanted to ask you, and is going back to you doing this, you leading this facility, all the knowledge that you didn't have on meat processing, a little bit of meat science, and we're going to touch here in a minute over there about aging. Where do you get that? I mean, who does Todd talk to about all that science stuff that you can apply and that we can visually see that, okay, this works, this doesn't work?
Well, I guess we'll back up to, I mean, so when we first started, Ultrasource was one of the first people we had in the facility. Derek Schroeder and another gentleman came down, and we were in an empty shell. And so, I mean, they were pretty instrumental in helping us, with equipment layout and kind of design and just communication back and forth that whole way. But I mean, you just have to dig into it, just because you don't know something about a certain topic doesn't mean that you shouldn't know it or you shouldn't learn about it. You just dig in and you just start picking up the phone. You call people, you get a hold of universities, you go tour universities, you go tour facilities, you read research. I mean, there's just certain things you have to do. I basically had to sit in here and pretty much reinvent myself, from what I'd done before to what I'm doing now is totally, totally different to what I've ever done, and the responsibilities and the burden that I've had on me is not anything I've ever been used to, but none of that matters. You just have to wake up every day and go to work.
Being resourceful, that's one of the things, being out of your comfort zone and keep learning.
Yeah.
You never stop learning, I guess.
That's right.
Even with higher degree, man, you learn a lot. So thank you a lot for being here today and, getting us in today here to your facility. I think we'll continue the conversation in the future, and thank you a lot.
You bet. Thank you.